So we'll hear shortly from the All Ireland Smart Cities Forum team with Donna, Anne and Caroline when everybody is in and we're ready to kick off. Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the All Ireland Smart City Forum Advantage Smart Tourism event. What a year it's been. The All Ireland Smart Cities Forum always strive to spark interesting conversations around contemporary issues, and we have an excellent lineup of people this morning. And so this discussion is around tourism and where we're headed post-COVID. Our first speaker this morning is Joseph, and Joseph is the Director of Advantage Australia Dublin. Prior to his assignment to Ireland, he worked in Serbia, Mexico and Switzerland, consulting on marketing opportunities, marketing access and marketing entry in Austria, working very closely with Ireland to connect to entrepreneurs. My name is Karina Hanrahan, and I work in strategic innovation in Smart Limerick. And I'm delighted to be here this morning to moderate for you on this Smart Tourism event. So if we can welcome Joseph.
I'm here. Shall I start right away?
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Delighted
Karina,
to hear
perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Good morning, everybody. Welcome also from my side to this webinar on smart tourism. We are delighted and happy to cooperate with the All Ireland Smart City Forum on this webinar and on a series to come. So try to get interesting, insightful speakers for you that can a little bit show what Austria is doing how Austrian startups and also Austrian tourism board reacted to the current crisis, which I guess there's no fit for all, but I think it's a good way to see how others worked their way around in these really unusual times. My name is Joseph Tremble. I'm the Director of Advantage Austria. And some of you might have asked yourself, what is Advantage Austria? I guess the easiest way to describe is we're the Austrian Enterprise Island. We are here in Dublin, we are based in Dublin, and we provide a variety of platforms to link Irish and Austrian companies. An example would be the Austrian Pavilion at the Energy Show, or providing speakers for webinars, which is now during COVID-19 was more important. But also we bring over delegations from Austria to meet potential clients and Irish partners. Well, that's from my side. I wish you all an insightful and interesting webinar. And if you have any questions for us, for me, my colleague Dagmar and I, we are online today, and we are happy to also receive questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Joseph. It's wonderful to have yourself and Dagmar online. We're going to kick off with Brian Hart, who's joining us from Tourism Ireland. Brian is the head of consumer engagement and e-marketing, and he's been preparing for the recovery post-COVID, the use of data and digital innovation for the consumer journey. Brian's going to talk us through the roadmap and share how it is that they're going to shape and create demand for Ireland as a destination.
Thank you very much, Karina. Good morning, how are you doing? And good morning to everybody else. It's a remarkable time, obviously. Tourism Ireland's role is the marketing of the island of Ireland overseas as a holiday destination. And therefore, this has been a particularly challenging year, clearly, in that our tourism numbers are right back to the late 70s, something like 1977 numbers, which gives us a particularly interesting context. I'm going to share my screen and dip into a few slides. So we are about, and what we have been about for the last number of months is preparing for recovery. In particular, my area is around digital, and we've been putting a significant effort into digital innovation in the last while. I'll talk today about our approach to consumer journey management, the key innovations that underpin that, and also some of the challenges that we have faced in developing for this. I'll also provide some insight into the content and the creative approaches that we've been taking. But again, this is only scratching the surface in the next few minutes. So our context clearly is massively changed. In fact, if you had this slide at the end of 2019, it would be completely different. We would be saying we have potentially or a risk of over-tourism in some areas of the island, like Dublin, Killarney, the Giant's Causeway, Cliffs of Moher, and so on. All of those faced challenges right at the top of the cycle. But now we're right at the bottom of the economic cycle, and we have probably an unprecedented industry and trade crisis, and that is the one pillar of our attention right now. Is that we need to recover in order to assist our industry and our trade to recover and thrive in the next few years. Lots of other changes that have occurred this year. Digital acceleration. We're all on Zoom. We're all living in teams. And it's quite likely that the nature of work will have changed. The nature of people's digital engagement will have changed fundamentally. So these changes in behavior have possibilities of being long-term, and therefore have long-term implications of consumer behavior changes that we may need to adapt to, particularly in the digital space. Clearly, we have environmental concerns, and more particularly right down at the bottom of the sustainability of travel within the kind of the wider environmental context. In Tourism Ireland, we have a corporate plan, and we have a marketing roadmap that fulfills in that corporate plan. Our current marketing roadmap places our consumer at the heart. Now, every marketing organization will have said this over the last few decades, that the consumer should be at the heart of your marketing. But what we are talking about is the specific consumer. So we have target audiences who share certain motivations. So culturally curious consumers, for example, or great escapers, market segments that of people that share motivations. But our audience will, our culturally curious audience in our source markets is something like 220 million people who are culturally curious with those motivations. What we are talking about is marketing to each of those individually, but at scale. And this is an unprecedented challenge for us, but it's also a comparatively new challenge for marketing organizations. So our roadmap ambition is to significantly increase consumer propensity, the consumer's likelihood to come to visit all of the island of Ireland, by building its motivational appeal through inspirational brand activity, so the tourism brand Ireland, but also through the deployment of impactful personalized marketing communications. And so our goal when we talk about economic cycles is that we're managing at the top of the cycle, we're managing the spread of the consumer through to less touristed areas, but at the bottom of the cycle that we're able to soften the bottom of the depth of the economic cycle. And that's our goal here, is to be able to create and shape demand regardless of where the economic cycle is. And we've been making a series of investments over the last number of years, particularly in marketing technology, that the goal is to give us this control. And this technology has lots of components, lots of integrations, flows of data, pipelines, and quite a bit of machine learning and so on that I'll touch on a little bit. But right at the heart of it are 4 building blocks. And these building blocks are, firstly, identity. Is that if I reach you on a browser, on a device, and then I reach you in another browser on another device, that we're able to glue together that concept of you as a person into one identity. And this is an interesting challenge. There's lots of different approaches to establishing a consolidated identity, and we've been working on a particular approach. So establish the consumer's identity, because what that then means is that you can understand all of the touch points that you've had with that consumer in a digital environment over the period of their consumer journey, and you can begin to aspire to manage that journey if you do not have a consolidated identity, then every time you come across that person, you'll be treating them as somebody that you've never seen before. And therefore, you cannot meaningfully consider about managing their journey and shaping that journey. The next item across the top there is presence, is detecting the consumer's presence on the island of Ireland. So as a marketing organization, we don't do a transaction. And nevertheless, we need to understand our conversion. So the arrival of the consumer on the island is important for us to train our machine learning models to understand what upstream from the arrival of the consumer, what upstream from the arrival of the consumer has worked to get the consumer to come. And so we have an effort to detect presence. And so at the tail end of 2019, we detected 200,000 consumers who we had previously seen in our digital marketing. The third building block in the bottom left is propensity, and I alluded to propensity earlier on, is that we're scoring every single consumer that we reach. So that's tens of millions of consumers. Each individually has their own propensity score, is how likely is that consumer to come to Ireland at that moment in time. So our goal clearly is that we manage the consumer's propensity such that when they arrive, 100% propensity means that they're on the island of Ireland. And so therefore, if we can reach people where there's a baseline of 5 or 7% propensity, and we're able to engage with people, can we add propensity over time by getting people to our consumer website, showing people digital video, emailing consumers, and so on. So can we incrementally manage this propensity, but not only manage the propensity, but also then manage what content they see within that journey, and that's where orchestration comes in. So yes, we need these building blocks that allows us to observe the consumer, but orchestration is about making the journey happen in an integrated way across our digital channels. So this is saying that somebody we have seen watch a digital video comes on to Ireland.com, that the Ireland.com website is aware of the state of that consumer, that has been changed by the fact that they have seen previous video, and that we're able to personalize that journey on Ireland.com. But when they sign up for an email and begin receiving email, that at the point that an email is sent, that each email is different for every individual. It is customized for that consumer's state because they've been on Ireland.com or they've seen video, and any order of these journeys is therefore possible. So orchestration is about making this happen across multiple channels. So propensity, as I outline, is we observe the consumer to come into Ireland, and then we work our way backwards to understand each of the touch points that we had with them and the role that each touch point played. So we are able to look at, for example, a single visit to Ireland.com and say that increased the average increase of propensity of the visitors from a specific campaign was 6%. So that's 6 percentage points. Now, what's interesting for us there is that, as I said earlier, 100% equals a visit, and we know the average revenue, tourism revenue for a person. So, say for a US consumer is 909 euros. So, a single propensity point is 9.09 euros, and then we're able to work out a value of a visit if the average is 6% increase. So, we're able to say that the value of visits was 45 euro. We're then able to monitor the cost of our advertising and our spend to make sure that we get a return on investment from every single engagement. So the important thing about propensity is that we're able to be recalibrating that over time and push that back into the model so that we're able to represent better content and a more informed journey for each consumer, each subsequent consumer. So we have machine learning models built into our process because this is the way to do it now. This is the way that marketing scales, is we consolidate into a single customer view based on that consumer's identity. We make a calculation of their propensity score based on some background information, some baseline information. We calculate the contribution of TV and organic social media and all the rest of it, and fold that into the propensity score, as well as the individual observations of that specific consumer. We then have a model that runs a next best action simulation that makes recommendations for what the next action should be in advertising, in website, in email. And then we pass that through what we call an air traffic controller, which overlays the business rules on top of this. So if we, for example, if we're at the top of a cycle, economic cycle, and we're trying to steer people away from Dublin to the north of the Wild Atlantic Way, to Donegal, or the northwest, and push people to Derry, for example, then that's how the air traffic controller is where we do that. We set biases within the air traffic controller that allow us to manage the volume of exposure of the different locations and products that Ireland has to offer, and that could get shown. And so if, for example, the next best action recommendation is Dublin, but the air traffic controller says, hang on a second, we've shown too much Dublin, we then are able to move to the next recommendation. If that recommendation is Donegal, then we let that through, and it goes through to the execution engine. The execution engine then moves into orchestration. So we're able to activate our digital work in a coordinated way across these channels. So we pass through the ID into our digital management, data management platform, add that person's ID to a specific audience that receives a certain kind of asset that was recommended for them. So we pass that through to Google or to Facebook or to other ad networks to be trafficked at that point. But the decision about what happened is way back up before the execution engine. And more or less the same structure is true for email and for website personalization as well.
2 minutes, Brian.
Okay, thank you. So our innovations and challenges, clearly machine learning models have been, we've developed those from scratch. Data operations was developed from scratch, and all of this coordinated personalization, it was also done from scratch. So innovations and challenging. Clearly, lots of complexity. The privacy environment is a big one. We've established a consent perimeter, a consent boundary around Tourism Ireland, so that we're able to make sure that people are giving their consent at the point where we're gathering their individual data. Through 2020, we've been innovating on content. We've had for a long time a strong social media presence. This year, a whole of the organization effort has been put into maintaining Ireland at front of mind for our consumers. We have 6.6 million followers across our social channels, over 50 active channels, lots of different languages, different platforms, and so on. And we've pushed the hashtag Fill Your Heart with Ireland across 9 different themes. You can see an example of our plan for a certain week in the culinary theme. So each week, each of the 9 themes would have content that will be pushed to all of our channels. We've had used VR in various points, and we've partnered with Tourism Northern Ireland and Fáilte Ireland on assets that they have created. Really super content, original, immersive VR content, promoting the likes of Belfast and the Wild Atlantic Way. It can be a super experience. For me, the most important thing, though, is correct context, because distribution is very difficult. There isn't yet a widespread culture of experiencing VR. So planning for the distribution of these kinds of assets is really important. And I think you'll see from Derry a little later on, a really lovely example of augmented reality used in location to enrich the consumer's visit. That's a really nice example of something being used in the correct context. We're relaunching Ireland.com. It connects up with orchestration, nearly there, and that's this site is imminent. The relaunch is imminent, and this will be well in advance of our activation campaigns at the end of Q1. We've also put new emphasis on sustainability within Ireland.com, and we're threading that all the way throughout the site in accommodation, through articles, but also through a dedicated section in the site. So lots of new features, really hardcore technology and capability underpinning, but hopefully we'll see lots of rich experiences for consumers to hopefully tout the visit to Ireland, and that we're there right in front and center competing for that visit when the world opens up, hopefully in Q2 next year. And that's me.
Thank you so much, Brian. Fascinating. I'm sure we're going to have loads of questions. I have loads of questions, but we're on a very short time frame. So
great. Happy to take them up.
Lovely, thank you. So we're going to move over to Thomas Bodmer, and Thomas is the Executive Director of Next Floor. Thomas is here in Ireland as in order to get a focus on the deal flow on his accelerator program. And what they're doing here is they are, sorry, I beg your pardon. What they're doing here is they're setting up investors and bringing together people from Austria and from Ireland. Thomas, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Very good. So, Thomas, I believe you're going to talk to us about optimizing real innovation and how startups are reacting to this crisis in tourism.
Thank you.
We're ready when you are.
Sorry.
No problem.
Is that working?
Yeah, perfect.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar and like to guide you through our work and the view, of course, on this special situation we are in now. First, as Corina said, I'm an investor. I was born in Zurich, in Switzerland, but I moved then to Salzburg because of love, and I stayed. And now I am working as a business angel, but also as a head of tourism accelerator for technology for tourism. So this is one of the reasons why I'm here today. First of all, let me talk about the impacts of COVID now in Salzburg as a touristic hotspot in the world, but it's similar to others, of course, worldwide known and very hotspots specific onto which are focused on tourism, like Salzburg. As you can imagine, we have Salzburg is on the roadmap of every grand tour for the whole world. Everybody wants to be here one time in his life, and we had more than 30 million people here in Salzburg last year, and almost without any advertising. So you can imagine at the ITB, the tourism fair in Berlin, Salzburg don't even have a box there, because it's not necessary. People are coming here. Now, of course, this has dramatically changed. Of course, we suffer massively from this crisis, and not only the city, but also the whole county of Salzburg, and I would say the country of Austria as well, because there is a massive economic factor, tourism. Spoiled as we are, or we were, the launch of new ideas is highly important now, and it was, or it is, a little bit difficult in Salzburg because we are built on traditions. We are a little bit backward oriented, and of course it's much more difficult for us than, for instance, for Linz. You will hear about that later. But this crisis gives us also the chance for innovation, and again, we have the advantage for that because of the reputation and the credibility we have in the world. So this is one of our main assets of the tourism accelerator, is the place we are. Interestingly, we had our experiences with startups were focused on especially optimizing of the already existing. And I think this focus has changed a little bit to more specific and more real innovation. Let's go into that. First of all, it's probably not so clear. Of course, technologies like artificial intelligence or virtual reality are fantastic, and we are interested in all these applications in this area. But the point is, first of all, there is an implication of comprehensive digitalization. For instance, in the relatively weak countryside, weak structured countryside, where digital basic tools aren't so common as you probably think. So for instance, a property management system in a family hotel in the countryside is not given at all. So they aren't bookable online, and they don't have, for instance, the possibility to have dynamic pricing, for instance. So first of all, we need digital innovation and also a defragmentation of the infrastructures, even here in Salzburg, or even in Austria, I would say. So that's important. Before the COVID, this, as I said, the tourism was a self-running and innovation was not really a factor. It was even interference factor, because everything was running and nobody asked about the new stuff, because what for? It was running. And now, and that's why applications were focused on, as I already said, marketing or social media tools, or the omnipresent digital concierge system, and so on. In my eyes, these optimization tools have lost of significance dramatically. And post-COVID, we need a new ideas, challenges, and because the challenges are big, for instance, for smart traffic concepts, an interesting point, or tools to add value. So that means formerly crowded cities with mass tourism has to be more focused on real added value tools. So that means, for instance, a smart guidance system, or a creation of experiences with artificial intelligence, and so on, or augmented reality. So be more focused on the real technological innovation. That seems to me very important, and that's what we are looking for. And of course, the analog will disappear more and more. And this will be a big challenge to bring people to new ideas with the technical infrastructure. And I think the massive tourism has to change more to experience, to smart tourism means, for in my eyes, using tools, technical tools, but to be more authentic, be closer on the experiences we can offer here. And that means also, of course, be more sustainable and develop more the relatively weak regions in the countryside. So let's talk about talk me about Nextpro, what we are doing, and what's the idea behind it. I'm head of a investors circle here in Salzburg. We started that in 2016 with the name Shark Pool, but this was not a very good one in my eyes. It was a little bit arrogant and not true, because it's a bloodthirsty name. We aren't sharks, so we want to help people or help startups to come to the market, and we are connecting them with investors. And we are focused on tourism and hospitality, and also arts and culture, because we know how that works here. And I think, as I said already, we have the credibility and also the reputation to do so. And of course, we are also we're running investors academies to build up new investors, to bring them to direct investments, as we are doing. Last year, we established an accelerator called the Tech for Tourism Accelerator with two backgrounds. The first one was to bring our investors together with smart startups. So that means to be a little bit closer to the deal flow. But also the second point was to be really innovative in terms of new stuff. Bring it to here. Let's tested in our region, in our market, which is a very high developed one, of course. And if they are working here, they will work everywhere. And at the end, of course, the idea is to invest and to bring, to fund these startups. To end my intervention, I want to explain or tell you about 4 startups which has passed our accelerator and who are examples for what I've said. First of all, Avisio and Sisi, 2 startups with basic tools at the digitalization of former analog areas. Avisio is a supply management system for small hotels and family hotels in the countryside, where, as I said, the digital age not had arrived already. And they have also a possibility to connect that to a customer relationship tool management, meaning they can connect different tools for the hotel business. Sisi is interesting. That's a management system for birth places in harbors, especially in the Adriatic Sea and the Croatian coast, where also the analog management of harbor, the Port Authority are working mostly analog, but they have to change it to digital tools because of, you need distance and so on, as a provoked by the crisis, of course, too. So this is a tool for a changement between analog and digital world in the world of sailing and yachting and boats. And the other one, Campstar and Tripoli, are more sophisticated from the technical point of view. So Campstar is an Airbnb for camper. Camping is increasing all the time.
2 minutes, Thomas.
I'm finished in 1 second. And Tripoli is a road map management system for alternative tours and so on, based in Linz. So very interesting startups. I can share it to you if you want later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And we would love to for you to share it with us later on. We'd love to have a look at what some of your startup companies are doing. Can I just remind everybody that we have a question and answer section? So if you have a question that you'd like to pose to our speakers thus far, please feel free to put it in the questions and answers. I see we have one question in already for Brian. This question is from Luigi, and are there any plans to systematically include a concern for diversity and for physical and cognitive differences in considering visitors' customers? I suppose it's about, Brian, it's about maybe disabilities being included systematically as a concern.
Big question. It's a big area and requires a lot of consideration. And there's a word in there, systematically, and even that is quite challenging. So if we're to talk about kind of concerns for diversity and accessibility in 2 different domains, for example, in diversity, we put effort into, and we had a working group on consideration of same-sex imagery in through all of our marketing. And so, for example, in the redevelopment of Ireland.com, then we have same-sex couples when we're talking about weddings in Ireland, for example. And so, but the decision there was to seed same-sex imagery through our content to make sure that it had the right kind of representation without necessarily saying we're going after this particular area. It was about blending it through natively within the site. Then separately around accessibility, again with website development, we've taken on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the AA standard, and so we built to the AA standard. Now we're just a marketing organization, we're not the destination on the ground, so clearly there's a lot of considerations around physical accessibility in the destination that we can't engage with. But it raises a kind of a much broader question, particularly when it comes into using machine learning models. And there's a big area at the moment in machine learning about the ethics and bias within machine learning models. Now, we just don't ingest the data that allows us to be able to address any biases that we may have, because we don't have the raw data to be able to do that, because it's, in many cases, this is sensitive data types that we just don't ingest. So it's a good question. I think there's a very high bar set by saying systematic approaches. We've certainly made formal attempts at accessibility and diversity in some areas, but I think will never be fully there. I think if you, the most important thing is to be open to listen to where your limitations may be, and then to address those progressively. And the flip side is also is that next year we just have a massive recovery to get. We need everybody, and that pushes people to be thinking in mass market kind of ways, and the individualized content for specific use cases becomes more difficult to justify when you just have this broad-based recovery to achieve. So I will certainly say we've made efforts, but systematic is a high bar. Karina, will I take the other question then as well?
Perfect. The other question is, how did you go about building the machine learning tools? Are those tools available on the market, or were they bespoke?
Yeah, so we've built within the Google Cloud platform, in part because a lot of marketing, digital marketing infrastructure in marketing technology uses a lot of Google tools anyway. So Google DoubleClick Campaign Manager, Google DV360, we use BigQuery as a data store, and so on. So we would natively use a lot of the Google tech, Google Analytics, Google Search tools, and so on. So we've also then built into the Google Cloud platform. So those are publicly available, but the individual models are ours. So they were bespoke to us. They were based on our data sets and our approaches. Now the structured approach is I feel robust and fairly standardized. So I talk about air traffic controller, that's about business controls, and talk about next best action models and so on. These are all kind of fairly common in concept. Now the reason we did this is that one, at the point we were starting, machine learning was relatively immature in the marketing technology domain. There were no real tools that were satisfactory. We wanted to steer away from rules-based approaches to decision-making, because the minute you start making rule sets, you end up with a bird's nest of rules. If you try to scale your capability, you end up with rules upon rules upon rules that then begin to contradict each other, and the management of that then doesn't scale. We would not be able to manage it. So we leaped over rules and went straight to machine learning. But rules-based approaches were inherent in a lot of the marketing technology tools that were available to us at the time. So it was comparatively immature. And also they were charging an arm and a leg. We just couldn't afford it for some of the most advanced tools, the likes of Adobe Cloud. We just could not afford kind of the basic licenses and then all of the individual skills to build on top of that. So we went with our own.
Brent, I know you have to run, so I'm just going to say thank you so much, and your whole consideration around behavior change and setting biases and targeting markets is fascinating. We'll have to listen back to it a few times to get it all in.
Great stuff.
Thank you very much.
Not at all, Karen. Thank you.
Thomas, you're muted there. Thomas, thank you so much. That was really interesting, and to see how you're running this accelerator program and bringing in, the whole ecosystem of innovation, and supporting them through the entire process and looking at their business models. Can you tell me, I know you were focused very much on added value and you know, what value it is that your startup was focused on. And I must apologize because at the beginning of this, when I was introducing you, I was still very focused on the conversation we'd had before we kicked off. So like I lost my train of thought ever so slightly. So yeah, so the use of technology. Can you tell us a bit more about that adding of value and how it is that you bring that into the business modeling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, usually, as I said, I mean, tourism was here especially focused on mass tourism. So that means relatively cheap things for a mass of people. And now we have to increase the value of everything. The experiences of cultural events, of even of sightseeing, you know, and you can add the value in this sense, for instance, via flow guidance management systems, where you can reach new areas in somewhere in the city or in the countryside when formerly nobody has been. So that means for us value increasing. Not be focused all the time on a hotspot or a highlight, like I don't know I don't know whatever in the center of the cities, but bring the people also to, let's say, a waterfall somewhere in the countryside, but always be aware of sustainability, of course. And I think new ideas and technologies should be based on these ideas. You know, be a little bit more open for new ideas, but sustainable, with a sustainable aspect. And there are some startups, as I said, for instance, Triply, this company is managing alternative routes for tour operators, for instance. And I think that's an added value, because they are not only focused on the main routes.
I suppose that use of data and technology to derive better insights, that's also less arduous on the planet, is very important, and the whole smart cities model. I was particularly interested in how you were looking at your supply management and linking it with the CRM. I know you were talking about small hotel chains or family-owned hotels, and I thought that was very, very interesting. You mentioned dynamic pricing.
Yeah, which is quite new. I mean, first of all, the revenue management is an important tool, and of course for the hotels, but it's not common at all, and especially in the small hotels, mostly family driven hotels, they don't have it at all. But it's important, because it should be the price should be built on different components, like the weather, or is there a fair in the next village or town or whatever. And I think revenue management is interesting, and as a consequence of that, data management is also very important. And there you can talk about let's say dynamic pricing more and more. And for instance, the skiing regions here in Austria will have a dynamic pricing in the next couple of years, I'm sure, based on yeah.
Well, thank you for talking us through your best practice. And I know there was an awful lot of learnings there for people. If there's any more questions come in, I know that the girls will send them on to you. And thank you very much for being with us here this morning.
Thank you very much for you.
Thanks, Karina.
So moving swiftly along, because I think we're on schedule, but we better stay smart. We're going to move and talk to George, Professor George Steiner. And George is from Linz. And he was pointing out to us before this that they were a finalist in the European Capital of Smart Tourism Awards in 2019, and that they're part of the 50 best places to visit in the Wish You Were Here. So George is tourism director of the Upper Austrian capital, a role he has held for the last 13 years. Previous to that, he worked in the tourist office as managing director. So, good morning. Are you with us, George?
Yes, good morning. Hello from Linz. Welcome, everybody. Just a moment. I try to start my presentation.
I think it's okay. Yeah, we can see you.
Yes, but I cannot. Okay, yes. So, welcome and thank you very much. You introduced about my my steps in tourism. Linz, sorry, no. Linz is on the Danube, and best wishes from the Danube and from Austria. Thank you very much that I can be part of this webinar of the All Ireland Smart Cities Forum and from Advantage Austria. It was very interesting for me to hear the other lectures. Some information to Linz. I'm sorry that I didn't find a map. Oh, that I couldn't find a map where the whole British Island and special Ireland is on, but that you have an that you know where Linz is located. Linz is the third largest city in Austria with about 200,000 inhabitants. Linz recorded almost 1 million overnight stays in 2010, but in 2020, sorry, 2019, sorry, but 2020 it's 50% less. Linz is one of the centers of the Danube cruise. About 2,000 passenger ships dock annually here in Linz on the Danube. Linz is a traditional industrial city. It's a headquarter of first alpine steel production, and more and more Linz becomes an attractive cultural city with numerous museums, a concert hall with 1,400 seats, the most modern music theater in Europe with 1,200 seats was opened 2014. And you said it, Linz was a finalist 2019 in the context of the first time award of the title European Capital of Smart Tourism. And we won the award in the submission category Culture, Heritage and Creativity. But 2009 was Linz European Capital of Culture, and I was speaker in Galway in Ireland since some years, and I'm sorry that Galway had the title in this year, and I hope they can bring it into a good future. But this title, European Capital of Culture, brought a very good spirit in the city. Linz is UNESCO City of Media Art since 2014, and Linz is with the Electronica Museum and the Electronica Festival, the city with the world's leading event in the field of media art. We are very proud on this event and on this institution. Since we won the award for European Capital of Tourism, for me is the question, what does smart tourism really want? We heard a lot of digitalization today, a lot of technique, a lot of possibilities. And here you can see the 4 categories, what you have to bring to win a title, to win an award: sustainability, accessibility, digitalization, cultural heritage, and creativity. And yes, I think the definition of all these terms is not ended, and we have discussed what is behind this term: sustainability, digitalization, cultural heritage, and creativity. And I will discuss with you what can be the future. Will the 4 criteria of smart tourism, of smart city, be redefined? That's for me a very important question. Smart tourism perspective perspectives and thesis for criteria also according to Corona. I have 6 theses. You hear this is the individualization of mass tourism. This is a central question: what instruments are used and what products are there to diffuse tourism as a mass phenomenon? We heard some strategies. Example from Linz is our Visit Linz app. We developed a gaming area to experience the city playful. An augmented reality mode makes collecting the Linz cakes. You know, the Linz cake is it's a very world famous cake product created here in Linz. The Linz cake is a fun experience like catching Pokemon. We can learn a lot of the playing industry, collecting points and spending them like real money in restaurants or shops brings frequency in shops and restaurants and enables the user to explore the city individually. We have this in German and in English. Please look to this app. And I think also known as the smart, it's also important Austrian charm. We use it, and I think our guests are expecting this. A second thesis is sustainability in the 21st century. Okay, climate protection through good accessibility by public transport, green meeting activities. We had a lot of here in Linz. Avoidance of overloading, we promote offers in Congress area in seasonally weak times. Also the system, what Thomas said, with frequency for the hotels in lower times. The philosophy is not centralization to a few hotspots, but decentralized attractions spread over the city. You saw Salzburg. Salzburg has a problem that a lot of things are concentrated to the Getreidegasse in the middle of the city where Mozart was born. Linz didn't have this problem. We have a lot of attractions over the city. A third thing, networking. The cooperation between the different sectors, such as gastronomy, hotels, shops, but also culture, science, trade industry is important. Tourism has to go out of their own box. We have to cooperate with more sectors. Tourism has to contribute more to the capitalization of existing potentials. Tourism in the former centuries was too strong in his own box, and we have more possibilities to bring value into our destinations. The destination has to cooperate in networks over the destination, like tourist routes, European Union projects, joint developments with other destinations in Europe and the world. At time we are in a very interesting project by the EU. We are developing trans-Danube stories, narratives for more Danube countries to bring not only Vienna and Budapest, the hotspots on the Danube, to programs in tourism to bring hidden places like Linz, like Krems, like Győr in Hungary or Novi Sad in Serbia. This is our vision, to develop the Danube over the hidden places and not only about the main places and the hotspots. We are developing a new congress format or a festival format. I think we have to develop new formats with more partners, with companies, with culture, with culinary. And we had a pilot project 2019 with the travel culture. It was a new format of a convention in tourism. We are planning a digital portal, Linz Live, as basis for culture, shopping, and economy to deliver all digital formats. What was realized the last months of Linz in the user's home in the form of experience and inspiration. We are at the beginning of these steps, but now we have so much content in digitalization, in streamed events, etc., that we have to bring it, we have it to use for marketing, for experience, for the inhabitants, but also for our potential guests. Yes, innovation, it's a big word. Research and development, new tourism products, you heard it. We are working together with CubeTech for a better and cheaper bookability instead of monopoly-like portals like Booking.com. Yes, I think it's a problem for tourism that hotel booking is in a very monopoly situation. And we are developing hybrid meetings. Interesting companies VFrame to bring screens and instruments to can make meetings local and in a hybrid way. For me, very important is experience. For me, a very interesting and a very important book is Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. From presentation of points to our narratives to experiences. And the highest level of experience is transformation, not only in a digital way, in a very personal way, with a new type of guiding, with a new form of to connect people. Our NES focus is people. We decided it last year. The people and not the houses are the cities. It's the old Greek politic man Pericles, from visiting to meeting. I think it's a very important and for the future important strategy. Connectivity.
Professor, we have 2 minutes left.
Connectivity. Yes, we have data hubs where we can use the things what the colleague from Ireland told us. Linz has a philosophy of an open common city to have a lot of data to make experiences and to make marketing. Structures of tourism offers. I think we should go back to more regionality. We have a culinary strategy for Upper Austria to strengthen the regional share and to bring authentic presentation and narration of the city instead of kitsch and cliches. It's necessary more and more. Look into our social media tools. You will see what I say with this information. Yes, visitor economy. Vienna now made some interesting steps. I have the URL for you. Please look into this tool, and Linz is going this way since European Capital of Culture. Yes, here are some aspects. What is the way in the next years after Corona? And I think we need more performance measurement tools. For me, a very important professor expert is Terry Stephens. He wrote a book, edited this year. Linz is part of this book as one of 50 destinations in the world who are very interesting, developed in these parts. And you see, this is my vision, my philosophy in developing of smart tourism, not only the categories of the European Commission. We need more categories, we need more things to define smart tourism. Final thoughts, a new definition of the industry and the term of tourism. From tourism to futurism, this is the question, or only to guests, yes, to welcome industry. What is the term of the phenomenon tourism in the 21st century? The title European Capital of Smart Tourism as a driver for changes in tourism, but smart is more than digitalization. This is my, smart is more than digitalization. This is my message to you. And the slogan from Linz is Linz Change. changes. Let us work together to change tourism as well. Smarter, more individual, human, more authentic. I think these are the terms for the future. Thank you for attention and see you soon on the multicolored Danube. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I know that people will want to pose questions, and we're going to have the next speaker set. And anyone who has questions for Professor George, please post them in the questions and answers. And I know that everyone will be interested in your catching cake as opposed to catching Pokemon. So we will come back to it in a minute. And thank you very much for showing us your beautiful city. Okay, so as we move forward, we're going to talk to our colleagues in Derry City and Strabane District Council. So we're going to talk to John, who is the Arts and Culture Manager up there, and John is responsible for the delivery of the strategy for the city. He's created networks focused on securing the sustainability of the culture section. He is joined by Donna Roddy. Donna is the Digital Marketing Officer for Visit Derry, and they're going to talk us through their very exciting app that they're about to launch. And they're also joined by Jamie McRoberts, who is their lead developer and an award-winning immersive media studio specialist. So, good morning, Derry. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the sunny Northwest. And our presentation this morning is Was Alive app. It's strange, actually, when I was looking at this, I just seen that we actually started this process almost 2 years ago at this point, and at that stage, it was a very different animal that we first sort of put out a tender for, originally entitled Walls Alive, Bringing the Walls to Life Through Augmented Reality. Well, now obviously shortened down to Walls Alive, but the project itself has actually emerged in an entirely different form to what we originally envisaged. But we'll try and give you a real feel now for exactly what that looks like. So you're very much welcome to Derry in the Northwest. Now, the presentation this morning is sort of broken up into component parts. So obviously, I'm giving a few introductions here now. Then my colleague Donna from Visit Derry will give a little bit of context just to the product offering that we have within the city and the wider region. And then we have, well, not quite in person, but in a digital form, Jimmy McRoberts, who was from Retina, as the company that we actually commissioned to deliver the AR app. So I think we'll move on to this now, and I'd like to introduce my colleague Donna. And Donna, if you want to just give me the nod as we go along, and I'll just move through your slides.
Sorry, rookie error there, left it on mute. Hello, everybody, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. As John said, my name is Donna Roddy, and I'm the Digital Marketing Officer for Visit Derry. Visit Derry's primary role is to promote the destination of Derry, London, Derry to international and national audiences. And just really, I suppose, to talk to you about the app today, I just want to give you a bit of background about the city and how we wanted to, I suppose, enrich the visitor experience for our visitors, and how we've used the backdrop of our historic walled city to do this. So first and foremost, I suppose, you know, it's really important to let you know that the city is so rich in culture, heritage and history. As I mentioned, we're a historic city. We are in fact a walled city, and only one of the only completely intact walled cities on the island of Ireland, and in fact one of the best examples of walled cities within Europe. Essentially, we're a city with a story to tell, and that was really important to us when we were developing the app. You know, our city dates back to the 6th century, so visitors to the city, you know, can go on a journey and find out about the siege, the plantation, the emigration story that we have to tell. You know, we were one of the biggest emigration ports on the island of Ireland, and most recently, our recent history, the Troubles. Lots of visitors come to the city to, you know, explore that in more detail. So next slide, please, John. there's lots of reasons why people come to visit the city. One of those also is that we're in a really unique geographic location. We are positioned between two of the most scenic coastal driving routes in Ireland. That's the Wild Atlantic Way and the Causeway Coastal Route. So a really nice hub for visitors who want to, you know, spend a few days in Derry and then go off and explore beautiful Donegal or the Giant's Causeway. Next slide, please, John. Thank you. So, and you know, above all that, there really is so much to do in the city. You know, lots of people come to visit us for our iconic Peace Bridge, which you can see in the top left-hand corner. That's actually celebrating its 10-year anniversary next year. And then, of course, the Free Derry mural on the right-hand side in the picture there. And then most recently, we have had a new, I suppose, market segment coming to visit the city to see the Derry Girls mural. So you may be familiar with the TV show The Derry Girls, and that was written by a Derry girl herself, Lisa McGee, and essentially it follows the lives of a group of teenagers as they navigate their way around the around those difficult teenage years with the, I suppose, the troubles as a backdrop. So we've had lots of new tourists on the back of that. And then they're coming to the city and discovering, you know, our Derry Girls mural and going on a Derry Girls walking tour, and then obviously all our other tourism offerings. And also we have lots of people visiting the city for our festivals. We're known for our Jazz Festival, our Choral Festival, and of course our Derry Halloween Festival. We were voted one of the best, or the best destination to celebrate Halloween by USA Today. So if you're ever looking for anywhere to come, then definitely consider Derry for that. Next slide, please, John. But essentially today I'm here to talk to you about smart tourism and how we're incorporating that into our visitor offering within the city. I'm absolutely delighted to tell you that we're on track with that, and we are about to launch our brand new Walls Alive app. The app was developed by Derry City and Strabane District Council in conjunction with Visit Derry, and it uses augmented reality and GPS technology to provide an immersive walking tour around the city. It was designed with the user experience very much at the heart of the project. We really wanted to enhance that visitor experience. I did quite a lot of research looking into the ways in which we could do this. And we really tried to tailor it to the visitor and the journey that they would take in and around the city. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on as well was, you know, we had lots of people coming to the city to discover our walls, and that's the biggest attraction in the city is, you know, going on a tour of our historic walls. They're about 1 mile in circumference. And, you know, we had great footfall for that. But what we really wanted to do was encourage people to go on the walls, but step on and off them, because you're able to do that. There's different gates that you can go on and off the walls and discover some of our heritage and culture venues. So that was like at the forefront of our minds when we developed the app. So what we have done is we have developed an app that will be ready on the Google Play and App Store soon. What you do is you download the app, you're given a set of instructions, and you're told that you're going to go to 12 different locations. Firstly, you'll meet your tour guides, Michael and Mairead, who you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. And what they will do is they will take you to each location using mapping technology. And when you arrive at each location, they will give you a bit of background about the particular building or heritage venue. And then they will, a portal will come down and you will physically be able to use your phone and walk through the door and explore, you know, step in time back into history and explore the plantation, or, you know, look at the ships on the River Foyle. So there's lots of different immersive experiences within those 12 locations. And then also we'll encourage users to stop off at the locations and go and visit some of the museums, like our Museum of Free Derry, the Guildhall, the Siege Museum, or the Tower Museum. So we're really excited about the launch of the app, and I think, as I said, it really allows users to delve deeper into the history of the city. And, you know, one of the benefits is that they can do it at their own leisure. They could spend an hour. I think it would take an hour if you did it, you know, straight all in one go. Or they could spend all day doing it and stop off and go and visit the different attractions, or even stop off for their lunch. So it's really been designed with the user experience at heart. And, you know, before I take you to our next slide, I suppose we were looking forward, as John said, you know, this has been a work in progress for a while now, and we've been really looking forward to launching the app, but we've had to postpone that due to COVID.
We had hoped to launch it, I guess. We've hoped to launch it on a number of occasions at Halloween over the summer period. And again, next week was the next launch date. But obviously with the COVID crisis, we've had to keep pushing this back and pushing this back. So it has been a very frustrating process, but we're there, the product's done, we're ready to go. So we're very keen to get it out there. I think what I have to do now is really give a little shout out to our funders, which is the Heritage Lottery Fund, through a program that Tourism NI initiated. And it's also worth pointing out that those organisations that Donna had mentioned, our key heritage venues, were very much part of this process in terms of putting this together, in terms of organising exactly what the content would be, and defining a lot of the script. We obviously brought in people to do that element, but they ultimately signed off on that. And that was very important. And that's just with regards to really that last point in terms of what's in a name. Obviously, you know, there's a contested history, or a shared narrative, or a shared history within Derry and the wider region. Even if you want to take, for instance, the sort of the Derry stroke Derry Londonderry conundrum, as something which is captured within this particular AR app as well, just explained. So it is about interpretation, about understanding, and about maybe opening the doors to some of our cultural venues. So on one hand, you might have the Siege Museum, obviously with artifacts and interpretations about the Siege of Derry 400 years ago. And then you also have the Museum of Free Derry, which is a museum dedicated to the civil rights movement and Bloody Sunday. So you have these different aspects of history within the city. And the whole point of this app is that it takes you from the start in a circular motion up through the key heritage venues and gives you a flavour to a large extent of the city's rich and varied history. It's incredible whenever you actually delve into it. You know, the connections right across Ireland, right across Europe, all seem to have a focus or a connection with the city of Derry. But in that, in the AR app, what we've obviously done is try to sort of say, give that hint of a story, but then connect within our heritage venues and to drive footfall and traffic into these venues in order that visitors can get the full story of the city and really delve down in and get as much out of it as possible. Now, it has been a challenging process, so I'm going to welcome now, and at least in a digital form, our next contributor, Jamie McRoberts, who is from Retina, the company that we actually used to establish this, and he is going to talk a little bit more about the technical aspects of the AR app.
John, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yes.
Perfect. I don't know what happened there. We're slightly running over time, so we're going to have to run through it quite quickly.
I don't think I can speed Jamie up here.
No, I don't think so either, but we'll...
if you can give us the 4 minutes.
Perfect.
Let's say 4, it's actually 6. Play.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie. I am the lead developer at Repnize. We are an award-winning immersive media studio based in Belfast, but working with clients across the world like National Geographic, Save the Children, and EFW. So I think the most useful thing for me to do is to reflect back on the start of the project when we had various stakeholder meetings to start to spec the project. Look at some of the key decisions that we made and then how they were implemented from a technical perspective. So probably the biggest question to answer when developing an AR app for tourism is the app designed to be used in a specific tourist destination, or is the app designed to be used kind of anywhere in the world, but to kind of attract people to that tourist destination, or maybe some kind of mixture of both? In our context, the decision was made quite early on that the focus was really to enrich the digital offering that was available within Derry. For that reason, we took loose inspiration from Pokemon Go. Basically, our immersive content is plotted locations throughout Derry City. So the user has to kind of take their phone, walk to the place, and then they'll be able to interact with a hotspot that will open up this immersive experience for them on location. And I think the advantage of that is that, you know, we know specifically where they are, and therefore can provide really enriching content that relates to that physical location. I would say, however, that all those decisions were made in a time before COVID, and the landscape is quite different now. So probably for the near future anyway, any AR apps that are developed for tourist purposes are more likely to be, you know, taking that specific tourist destination, turning it into an immersive experience that can be engaged with remotely, in the hope that will generate interest, and sort of footfall will return once it's safe for everybody to kind of visit different locations and travel around again. So during some of our initial stakeholder meetings with Visit Derry and Strabane and Derry City Council, they highlighted through their analytics that there was a struggle with tourist footfall, where a large portion of tourists would visit the walled city, or would visit the Derry walls really. They would maybe participate in a walking tour, find out about the history of the walls, but not actually venture inside that walled city to engage with the different sort of museums or tourist attractions that were available there. So we thought that the app might, you know, would be a good opportunity to see if we can help kind of influence that tourist footfall in some kind of way. So the first thing that we did was to carefully plot these 12 interactive hotspots throughout the walled city. So they go around the walled city, but they also are placed, for example, in the diamond, which is right in the center of the walls. And the idea was that would help direct traffic, not only, you know, to do the lip of the walls, but also to go in through and slightly outside as well. The second decision that we made was to allow the users to access the content sequentially. So rather than having the 12 hotspots available at all times, and that the user would maybe serendipitously pick and choose which ones they wanted to engage with. In this case, you know, you have to access Portal 1 from Portal 2 to become active, and so on as you move around. And that way we think that we give a more sort of curated experience of Derry. And the final thing that we did was we added functionality so that if a user just engaged with a portal that related to the siege of Derry, for example, that once they'd finished that and returned to the sort of map interface, that there would be a pop-up modal that provided information about the Siege Museum. So where it was located, what its opening hours were, a little bit of a description on what it offered, in the hope that, you know, if the user was interested in the little snippet of information that the app gave them, that they would maybe go and visit that destination and support the sort of local tourist industry that way. We wanted to make sure that the app was multilingual, so we ensured that it supported the top 3 languages spoken by tourists of Derry. We wanted to incorporate inclusive design where we could within the app, and so we ensured that wheelchair access was marked throughout the map tour, and that subtitles were available at all times. Our aim for the app was that it used as little mobile data as possible, and the strategy there was we didn't want any circumstances where traveling or international tourists felt discouraged from downloading or participating in the app experience, you know, with fear of returning home to nasty charges from their mobile phone provider. So we designed the app in a way that used very, very little mobile data, and we also signposted throughout for users to go to the Visit Derry Centre and use the complimentary Wi-Fi there to do the initial app download. And finally, with the mobile phone market being basically a 50-50 split between Android and iOS throughout the UK, we wanted to make sure that we could support both those major platforms. So we used Unity Engine and the AR Foundation package to ensure that we could deploy to both devices without having to essentially create, you know, 2 separate strands to the project. Yeah, so that's really the overview of Walls Alive. From a technical perspective, I hope that the discussion of where the kind of tourist strategy and technical implementation overlap in order to ensure that the project met its objectives is useful to some of you out there who might be planning on developing an immersive application for tourism. Sorry I couldn't be there for the Q&A or be involved in the discussion that way. But if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them on email or social media. But yeah, I really hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, Virtual Jimmy. That's us. Thanks very much for your time this morning. It's very much appreciated. And I'll just stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, John. An amazing app, and really interested to see what you guys are doing. I know we're 10 minutes over time, but we do want to get, there's lots of questions and answers in regard to what you've been doing in our question and answer section. So I am going to just have a quick look and see what the questions are as regards, does the Walls Alive app require internet access or can it be used offline? It's fascinating. People can't wait to play with it. And a question for the team, how do you think local tour guides would feel about the app? In some way it will take customers away from them, or will this add value to their offerings? And there's another question on how do you plan on making people aware of it? So I suppose, how will local tour guides feel about it, and how are you going to build awareness around it?
Well, I think with regards to tour guides, it's we're sort of looked upon this as a kind of an additional layer to what we're already doing. So it shouldn't necessarily compete with tour guides, but it will also be there as a kind of a service. It was ultimately originally designed to drive footfall into heritage venues, but the notion is it could also be used out of hours as well. So if somebody wanted to do a walk around the walls and get us through the city at 9 o'clock at night when there's no tour guides or any other sort of product, then that would be perfectly legitimate as well. So we have had conversations with tour guides about this at the same time. So it's complementary, we believe, rather than competitive. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that, Donna, as well.
Yeah, I think, you can never take away the power of, that one-to-one communication with somebody. And I think one of our biggest selling points is our people in the city. People come into Derry and they're just so wowed by how friendly our people are, and how willing to help them, throughout their time in the city. And I think, as John said, this is just another layer. This is just, adding another offering to the tourist offering. And there's no reason why people can't go on and do a walking tour with a tour guide. I mean, they're very cheap. They start off at £4 per person. So it's a brilliant experience. Go on a walking tour. The walls are only 1 mile in circumference. Go and do that tour. And then at your leisure, you can download the app and go off and explore things. And find out a different narrative of the history. So yeah, it's just another layer.
It's maybe worth pointing out also that we're involved in a project looking at essentially doing an audit of our current signage and interpretation within the walled city as well. And the intention being obviously about looking at an upgrade of that in the years to come and what that might look like. So again, you're talking about another layer. Something like that you could argue is maybe competing with tour guides as well, but we don't believe so. We think it's just another one of these layers that you have to get right, but it also has to be consistent, and there has to be a sort of that message that is coherent throughout all of your sort of all your content interpretation.
Thank you very much, lads. I know here in Limerick we've been working on virtualization tours of the Shannon and stuff, so I have a small bit of understanding of just how complex it is that this amazing app you've created, and the level of complexity you must have been looking at besides anything else. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to come back for a moment to our earlier speaker. Are you still there, Professor George Steiner? I think you're muted, George. I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm still here, yes.
Thank you very much, George. It was really, really interesting to hear about your focus on the individual in Linz and your amazing city on the Danube. I suppose one of the things that struck me as being really significant in what you were talking about is that smart tourism, a bit like a smart city, people get very focused on the technological aspects of it, whereas you mentioned about leveraging relationships and about how those relationships, the relationship between tourism and culture, that non-siloed thinking was so significant, and how we need to broaden out our thinking in that respect. I really like your Pokemon app. especially if it's for cake. I don't know if in post-COVID
please come to taste it in Linz.
Yes, we would love to.
But we can make a position of a Linz cake to Dublin in the center of Dublin, and you can catch a Pokemon, a Linz cake in Dublin. It's possible.
Well, no, it is really nice to see how you guys are using gamification and you know, the use of creativity and you know, media art and games to engage with your city. So I'm sure we're going to be hearing an awful lot more from you. Is there anything else you'd like to add for us?
No, please, if you are interested in some of our tools or of some aspects, please contact me. I write in but in my presentation you have my contact information, mail address, and so on. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I'm happy to get some feedback from you.
Thank you very much. You may be sorry you said that, because I know for a fact that there'll be a lot of people who want to contact you and talk to you. So I hope we won't be taking too much of your time. I'm aware that we're over time, everybody. So thank you very much, George. And thank you very much to all our speakers. I suppose just before we go, I'd like to just kind of wrap up and think back through the people that we had been speaking to here today. You know, it was lovely to have Joseph Trammell here with us this morning, the director of Advantage Austria. And these kind of relationships, these international relationships between Ireland and different countries is really important. The learnings that we get from each other and that sharing of information. I work with a European organization called URBACT, which is very much about how we work in sync with different countries and learn from each other. I suppose the whole smart tourism thing, I mean, we're in unprecedented times. We have, here in Ireland anyway, we have, you know, we have Brexit, we have post-COVID, we have shrinking of budgets from tax intake. So it's really important that those relationships and the support we get from each other, that we can work together and try and find new ground. I suppose from the scoping that we're doing at the moment in Limerick around smart cities and stuff, it's very much in keeping with what came through here today, that those relationships between civic society, local government, industry and academia are very, very important in conjunction with our relationships in Europe. So we were delighted to be welcomed here today in order to moderate. It was lovely to have Brian here with us this morning, Brian Hart from Tourism Ireland, and talking about machine learning and how that's being utilised. I thought it was a fascinating presentation. And then our two speakers from the beautiful city of Linz, looking at the ecosystem of entrepreneurship and what they're doing to support that. And then the professor, the very learned professor, on the leveraging of relationships and, you know, the dynamic use of things that would be more traditionally considered to be the arts. To have our colleagues, the lovely team from Derry City here. I think we all want to go to Derry and use this app. And I thought it was really, really relevant that the focus was on ensuring that everybody felt that it reflected them and their values and their identity. That can be very difficult to achieve. So well done, and we can't wait to see your city. Just to close, I'd like to say that it was really nice to have the All Ireland Smart Cities Forum. I've attended a couple of their events in the past, and it's always wonderful to work with them. Really nice professional team, and has kept us all going here this morning, and Caroline has kept us on time mostly. It's my fault if it hasn't. So thank you very much to everybody. I hope you enjoyed the event, and it will be online in a couple of weeks' time. So do tune in and share information, and I'm sure all of our speakers are very happy to have their information shared and for you to be able to contact them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.